Stand by. Shooter ready.
Stand by.
Welcome back. We're here with a couple big hitters in the suppressor industry. This is Precision Rifle Series podcast, and I'm excited about this one as we've recently really leaned into suppressors by adding the suppressor category to the PRS Pro Series and Regional Series. And with that, I'm going to let you guys introduce yourself. Craig, why don't we start with you?
Yeah. So my name is Craig Arnzen. I'm VP of Sales and Marketing here at Area 419. I've been at Area 419 since 2016 when I built a website and John said, by the way, I got this product. Do you think we can sell it? That's the Hellfire. And now a shocking amount of time later, we're at 8.5 years since that happened. Things are a little bigger, a little scarier, more moving parts, but life's really good. We make, obviously we're going to talk today about the Maverick Suppressor, but we've got a line of reloading tools, precision rifle parts and accessories that we're tremendously proud of. We're based in Northwest Ohio, 100% American made by American workers right here in our location. We like to design and produce our own products so that we have the greatest control and the greatest ability to deliver to a customer products that are unsurpassed. So that's who I am, and that's who we are.
Awesome, thank you, Craig. Chase, let's hear more about you.
Absolutely, Chase Glenn. I'm the VP of Strategic Execution. I've done a lot for the company. I've been with them about 4 years now. Silence was my first foray into firearms. I was in healthcare for a long time, involved in the horse business, and so it's been a great introduction into the firearm space. I've always been a passionate guy personally around firearms and shooting and long range shooting in particular. And so, a little bit about the company. We're going to pass the 17-year mark this year, which we're really excited for. They have a great history in the suppressor market in general, coming out with a lot of what we call kind of hit singles, a lot of things that didn't exist prior. And, like 419, a really wide line of suppressors for, if you want to get really specialized with something, we can do that. If you need a little bit broader reach, we can do that as well. And then, just really excited it's an honor to be here with Craig. They make great products and have a great company. We're very similar and similar minded in that, it shows up in bar stock and leaves in a box with us. All the engineering's in house and we put a lot of pride in that as well. There's not a lot of companies. It's an honor to be with a company on a podcast that does that, because there's just not a lot of companies that do that and put that attention to detail into things and then take ownership of it, whether it be a warranty process or whatever the case may be. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this is it's truly an honor. Man, I've been looking forward to recording this one for since we talked about it like last week, the week before. And, Silencer Co. and Area 419, I think, are a couple of those companies in our sport that everybody looks up to. It is you guys make fantastic products, pinnacle products, in everything you do. And both of you I've known for a while and are characters that I love being associated with, and hopefully we can get some of that put down on track here, and all of our viewers can enjoy it. So let's talk a little bit about suppressor category. So this was full disclosure. This is an idea that Chase came up with probably about a year ago at this point. I think it took us a while talking about it. And we released it to the PRS Match Director Committee, which is where that's how we guide the rules and come up with the rules and make sure that it's going to work for our Pro Series and Regional Series and Rimfire Series and all that. I think we released it last September, October, and said, hey, we're thinking about this for next year. Obviously, there were some questions and stuff that have developed based on the rules that we put out, which is part of the reason we're having this podcast. But I guess, Chase, let's start with you. Can you just give our viewers a little bit of background on what your thoughts were, what your dreams were for having this suppressor category?
Absolutely. So we've got a product called the Omega 300, right? It's been out over 10 years. And the history behind that product, our founder and owner, Jonathan, shot that in pre-PRS matches, with some of the old timers for a couple of years before we even released it as a company. And his intention behind it was, okay, well, I'm going to go shoot these matches. Why? I own a suppressor company. Why would I not be shooting a suppressor? But at the time, a lightweight, semi-modular, and what I mean by modular is being able to change out end caps, change out kind of direct thread. That didn't really exist at the time. And so the Omega 300 was really kind of the stepping off point into kind of long range piece. He's a huge long range nerd like I am, and like a lot of us are in the company. And so, but then, frankly, the company kind of had to step away. Company kind of went through its own kind of growth and a little bit of settling and all that kind of stuff. And so, if you look at the history of us in PRS, we stepped away for a few years. And so whenever we came back in, and I've got a little cadre that was extremely helpful in doing that and being able to finance that and do all that kind of stuff. When we came back in, what we were met with was just not only the shooters, but the manufacturers, just this overwhelming sense of gratitude, welcomingness, ability to share the information. I mean, I couldn't ask for a warmer introduction for me personally into the sport. And I was just blown away because obviously we're involved in a lot of different facets of kind of the firearms. And long range shooting is a piece of that. But I've never met a more welcoming crowd. And so in taking that experience and really motivating me and me motivating my crew to say, hey, let's support this any way that we can. Then the idea started to formulate of, okay, well, I love brakes. I've got friends, really good friends that own brake companies, you know what I mean? And have histories in brake. I'm not anti-brake, right? But I'm a suppressor company. That's what I am. And so, so how do we, in the spirit of it, start to create opportunities? And then I started to run into some guys, and I'm not coming down on anybody. I started to run into some old timers that don't shoot matches anymore because of brakes, right? And like I'd watch these guys at a suppressor match dust off their rifle and just smoke all these young guys. You know what I mean? I'm like, well, why aren't you coming around? And he's like, man, I these guys are like, I can't be around the brakes anymore. And so that was the culture of the idea of like, okay, well, how do we start to not suppressor only matches? That we got a couple of them, you know what I mean, on a pro level that are amazing. I don't want everything to go 100% suppressed. That's not my goal. But how do we start to create some squads to where some guys, have some options around it and don't have to be around those kind of things? And then Ken, to speak to you, I mean, you were completely welcoming of the idea, right? Like,
for sure.
Obviously you wanted a use case for it, which I appreciate. And it made us put our thinking caps on. But, if to me, in the spirit of it, if we can get more people to shoot suppressed, whether it be the younger crowd or some retention on this older crowd or whatever the case may be, then it's great for all of us, whether it's 419 or some of the other suppressor companies or whatever, like, all tides rise sinking ships. Right. And so that's really my gusto in it. Is that at the end of the year, I'm going to be really proud to be up in Pennsylvania to give a check, you know what I mean? However we decide to give it, right, to somebody that was shooting suppressed. Yeah. And I'm going to be really direct with you. I don't care whether it's my suppressor or not. You know what I mean? Like the goal is that more people shoot suppressed, right? That's the reality of it. And I think we're already starting to see the fruits of it. I've been getting on some of the, the scoring methods and things like that. And we're seeing, we're seeing a pretty big contingent that are shooting in that suppressed deal. I think Twisted Barrel had a regional that over half of them was suppressed this last weekend. You know what I mean? Like, and if we get into those crowds and those regional crowds of those new shooters and, things like that, I mean, that's really important because at the end of the day, if they're going to buy a suppressor or not, that's really up to them. What product they buy, totally up to them as well. I just want them to be in a product that they're going to be happy with and they're going to be, comfortable with, and the company's going to take care of them. And honestly, you got two guys on the podcast that are going to do that. So like win-win.
Yep. Craig, let's I'm gonna point to you for a second here, and let's talk about the Maverick, and let's talk about where that really developed from. I think we got some of that from Chase on sound.
Before I do that, the Omega 300 is the icon of the suppressor world. I bought one in 2015 that is still in my side desk on a rifle, and it still gets used. It's wonderful, and I think your Scythe is maybe the coolest suppressor to be released in the last 2 years. That thing's it bends what you believe a suppressor should be able to do. It's unbelievable. So whether it's Silencer Coat, whether it's the Thunder Beast, people are way better at suppressors than we are, and I don't want to. Silencer Coat is an amazing organization. For us, though, where the Maverick came from, we're going to get in the Wayback Machine, and in the PRS, typically, people maybe don't last a super long time in it. There's certain people that have been doing it as long as I've been alive, like Rick Reeves, but it can sometimes be short-lived. So during 2017, I think it was, there was a phenomena called Leviathan suppressors. And it was a guy who was telling everyone that would listen that he'd created some suppressor that could truly reduce recoil. And John and I are on the plane sitting next to one another in row 37 to beg people to talk to us in 2018. And we're like, this doesn't make sense that he has some suppressor design, because it's a closed system, basically. For a brake to create recoil reduction, you are redirecting and then getting rid of that gas effectively. So in a closed system, we're like, we think the only way he's doing this is the suppressor it's 12 inches long and 6 pounds. I mean, it was a brick on the end of the rifle. It was huge. So we thought, okay, sandbox, how would we actually do this? And, I'd owned an Omega 300 with the anchor brake on the end of it. And that was one idea, but we also knew that the point of a functional suppressor, to really make it quiet, like get down to the 127, 130, 133 decibel, kind of that sweet spot for when people go, that sounds great. To do that, you have to reduce so much pressure and so much speed by the time it gets to the end cap that the ability of that brake to make a big difference is significantly reduced. Because again, brakes respond to high pressure, high volume gas hitting those baffles and bouncing off of them and basically allowing them to function like a parachute. Well, we thought, okay, what if we could just snap the thing in half and put a brake in the middle once in a while? So here's a Maverick. And this is really not dissimilar, and I don't have the second section here because that's not what you guys want. That's not what anybody wants to talk about in this podcast. But when it's in full 8-inch configuration or 9.2-inch configuration, it's traditionally quiet like a traditional suppressor. But we thought if we can just break this thing in half and not restrict the gas so much in this first section, and then give it a break, maybe we could make something that gave us a little bit of that Goldilocks zone where it's not going to be as quiet as a traditional suppressor. But unless you're running a suppressed only match, it's not going to be a situation where anybody wants to take their ears out anyway. And I know one of the things we're going to talk about is this term that people like to throw around of hearing safe, which you'll not hear me say seriously, and I don't think you'll hear Chase say seriously, especially on a centerfire can. We thought if we could, with our line in the sand not being the sound level of a bare muzzle, because I haven't seen a bare muzzle shot by a serious competitor in a match ever. And that's going, I started shooting matches for real in 2016. I've never seen someone be serious at a match with a bare muzzle. So against a muzzle brake, can we reduce sound enough that it is what I would consider being a human safe? Can we get to human safe levels and retain as much of the performance of a brake possible? And that's where we get to the Maverick in this configuration. You can also set it up a little bit longer, which takes a little more sound out, gives you different recoil impulse, whatever it is. But for us, the Maverick is about, and I wanted it because in 2020 and 2021 specifically, I was shooting a lot of matches, but it really started spooling up in 17, 18, 19. Yeah, my kids are of an age that they're going to grow up and get out of the house and matches will still be there. But if I shoot matches and one day my kids grow up and go away and I've missed it, I'll never get over it. So if anybody wonders why I'm not around, I'm always very clear about that. But the Maverick was because I would get, after one day of match, I'd wake up on Sunday morning and it felt like I went and tied one on, even if I hadn't, because you get that much shock and that much sound pressure moving through your head, whether it's my muzzle brake or somebody else's muzzle brake. And again, I love muzzle brakes as much as anybody. We sell a truckload of muzzle brakes, but we also understand that only like this many of our customers are actually shooting 2-day matches where you're going to go shoot 100 to 120 rounds surrounded by brakes. You're then going to sleep, wake up, and try to do it again. And when the Maverick hit the market, and I think we released it at, this is the finale, I think, of
finale 19.
So 19 finale. We released it.
Francis Cologne had one.
Yeah, and immediately that first finale, the only ones there.
No, it was 18.
Okay, that's what I thought. So we released it in 18, and then by finale of 19, they were kind of everywhere. But
yes,
the whole point was, and during 19, Maverick started winning a bunch of matches because, to Chase's point, muzzle brakes could beat you up. And some of these, be they old timers or young people that would wake up on Sunday mornings with their bell rung, and some people are less sensitive to it, fine. They would wake up on Sunday morning, and if you had shot a Maverick or a suppressor in general, you were typically a little more sharp in those first couple stages on a Saturday morning or Sunday morning. And when it comes down to winning, and 2-3 shots can be the difference between winning and not in most matches. What's your average margin of victory, Ken? It's got to be 3?
Probably 3.
2?
Yeah, some matches get away with 7, but
that's
some
uncommon.
Some are ties, some are 1.
Yeah. So, the idea that you could retain a little more mental sharpness, that you could be less fatigued by muzzle blast by the next day, to us said, product's great. And it's doing enough in performance that, they started winning matches in open. Francis has won matches, Chad's won matches, like Greg Bell won, won at K&M with one. People have won. Ben Fleener is a guy that shoots a lot. Won Mammoth with it. The Maverick has won a ton of matches, and it comes down to Chase's point. How can you let a guy be as comfortable as possible with as much performance as possible? And if you can win that battle, shooter's going to shoot.
Right.
Let him go.
Right. Yeah, I'll say that. So I personally have RO'd almost all of the AG Cups. I wasn't at the first one, and that is me trying to RO a little bit more and trying to still be involved in all that. And standing next to Ben Fleener or Francis Cologne. And there was I think there was 1 or 2 other.
Doug Koenig has run one for a long time. Doug is a first of all, fabulous shooter, but an enormously high round count shooter.
He shoots a lot.
It's one of those items for him too. If you can keep miles off of getting yourself rattled around a little bit, it's big.
Yeah, and just being an RO, the Maverick isn't quite enough that I can be there without hearing protection on in the shortest configuration. But man, relative to the 5 guys in front of him and the 5 guys after him that are using a brake, like I'd gladly stand there with a timer in my hand and be right next to the shooter. But it's more than just that. It's more than just that sound, right? Or the amplitude of the sound. It's that concussion that you feel in your sinus cavities and all of that. That I think that's where most of this comes from. Or that Sunday morning hangover feel is just that intense pressure, and shooting suppressed, or you shooting even Maverick and shortest configuration. Like it's just pleasant. It's very pleasant to shoot. Yeah, it's a little more push, but very pleasant. Right.
So I would be a nerd for just a minute. I went and dug up some old notes from when we were developing the Maverick. And the first thing we did in this baseline is we took out a bunch of rifles and a bunch of cartridges with a bunch of brakes, our brakes and other brakes, and figured out that at the shooter's ear, if you're shooting a common PRS rifle and cartridge with a common PRS brake, you're getting a sound level at the shooter's ear that is typically in the 162 to 165 decibel range.
Wow. That's
really, really loud. And your typical bare muzzle is going to be something like 150 or low 150s on those same rifles.
Also very loud.
Which is still very loud. And everything I'm talking in right now is going to be in pure dB. There's a lot DBA versus DBC. There's lots of ways to go about this, and we'll continue to dig in this. Chase is smirking because he understands that this gets really deep really fast. And then you have your traditionally quiet suppressors. So let's say an Omega 300 or a Maverick in the 8-inch configuration, or at that time it was an Ultra 7 Gen 1. Basically, those are if we could get somewhere between the Omega 300 and the Ultra 7, we felt like the 8-inch Maverick was a good product. And that's where we wanted to get. So call it your roughly 130 decibel level. That's our gap. We've got 160 to 165 with a break, 130 with a traditional 7/8-inch suppressor. And in the middle, you get what is bare muzzle or Maverick in the 5-inch configuration. They're quite close to one another in dB. What dB is a measure of is purely sound pressure. So when sound moves through the air, it's a series of waves that move. Those waves have an energy that comes along with them. So if you're ever at a concert and you're in the front row of the concert and the bass hits and you feel it thump you in the chest, you're literally being hit in the chest hard enough with sound waves at a frequency that your body can respond to, that you're feeling them hit you. The same thing happens when you pull the trigger on a rifle. The blast comes out of the end of your barrel. It's obviously sound included. There's other forces in play there, but it's moving around and it's reverberating backwards. Now with a break, it gets a more direct reverb when it hits those baffles. And with a suppressor, it's a much more muted reverb. You're getting it out of the suppressor itself, as well as anything that's left to come out the end. So sound pressure, the actual energy in those waves, doubles every 3 dB. Your ability to perceive sound doubles depending on where you read. And again, there's a lot of disagreement about this in sound science, and you got places like Pew Science that exist because there's so much subjectivity here. Your ability to perceive sound doubles depending on who you ask between every 6 and every 10 decibels. So, you're getting multiplication factors that are really quite large. So 12 decibels, which is basically your gap between this and a muzzle brake, is not only a doubling, but another doubling and another doubling and another doubling of sound pressure. So by the time you get up that's 2 to 4 to 8 to 16 times the sound pressure in raw pressure when you're talking about 12 decibels.
Right.
That's a massive gap. And I think that is when you wake up Sunday morning hungover versus not, even with a Maverick, which is not by no means a quiet, by no means a hearing safe suppressor. The gap between the two is enormous. Then you get into dBA. Now we publish in dB because it's the least, it's the hardest on us. Go Chase, go.
No, I was going to say it's the least controversial, right? There's so much debate around dBA that the industry standard at this point has been dB. And
but
for a lot of
dB
us,
is not
dB
maybe
is
great.
questionable.
Yeah.
And for a lot of us, dB, like for us, none of this existed when we started. So sound testing, we had to create our own sound testing. It didn't exist. And so we still utilize a lot of our own sound testing equipment. And so it's really cool to see where the industry's come in the last 17 years, where you have the independent reviewers and you have, the sound studies that are going on. The American Suppressor Association is getting involved, because all of this is beneficial to us in the future as we look at the availability of suppressors to the general public. Right.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's okay. No. Well, and the having to make it up. When we originally were doing this, we knew that dB is the least flattering to any suppressor, because a really well-designed, good-sounding suppressor is not going to dB as well as you might think. So there's then what's called dBA, which is decibels that are adjusted for the way the human ear manages pitch and frequency. So you're layering in a perceptive adjustment to decibels when you get to dBA. dBA is where things really start to shift and become quite a bit different. And on the side of kind of having to make it up as you go, when we got to the end of this, our final straw for are we happy with the way that suppressor works is we would bring people out and shoot into a berm and have them stand 10 feet behind and turn the other way and write down on a piece of paper what you thought. Because the human ear, we just got done with an optics test, which is wild. And there's a lot of controversy around something like that because the human eye is an enormously complex optical system. And every one of us has a different set of eyes. Our ears are very similar as well. The human ear is an enormously complex auditory system and audio management system. And every one of us is a little bit different. And what we like and what feels good and what sounds good. And can you, without changing your dB levels, can you bring down the pitch just a little bit? Because the same number of decibels at a little bit lower pitch to your ear is going to seem much quieter. So this game becomes really complex. When we publish in dB, this is roughly the same as a bare muzzle. If we publish in dBA, that number is decidedly different. And anyone who would shoot a Maverick in 5.5-inch configuration and then spin it off and shoot bare muzzle would tell you that the Maverick was quieter. But again, when you're like we can talk about the words hearing safe, when you're a suppressor manufacturer, you publish things that are the least flattering to your product possible when you're publishing directly.
Sure. Yeah, and there's been a lot of conversation about where the suppressor category rules should lie, right, on muzzle attached devices with muzzle brakes on them, right? And I think there's a lot of people in the community that say, like, well, whatever it is, it should be hearing safe, right? So that we could go, like, you could have a whole squad without ear pro, hopefully a whole match without ear pro. I love the idea of that. And the like the Box Canyon match or Silent Night in Oklahoma, like that's amazing. But those match directors put a lot of effort in to make sure that each and every suppressor is going to be comfortable to be around. Choosing my words wisely there, obviously. But in general, like all of our match directors, including, match directors in Illinois or California or other states that, aren't as friendly as suppressors. I can't have all of our match directors sort of being like, does that qualify? Does it not qualify? And that's where this thing really gets opened up, right? Like, what does it need to be? And I think, you can't say it's hearing safe. You can't draw that line because nobody's, OSHA's going to say, it's got to be under 80 decibels or something like that. Well, that's
OSHA says 140. And I'm not saying they're right. You know what I mean? But OSHA says 140. So.
Yeah, and that's not going to happen with a centerfire rifle, right? Like, even if you had a 20-inch suppressor or something on that was 2 inches in diameter, you're still going to get a bullet coming out, breaking the sound barrier, which is still going to make a noise, isn't it?
No, not necessarily at the shooter's ear, right?
Right.
We can get, depending on the volume of the can, the length of the can, there's a lot of internal design and technology. We can take something that does come out of the muzzle at 160 and get it in that 130s kind of range, right? The sight being the example. I can't explain why. My engineers can't explain why, but on 6mm and 6.5 bullets, it sounds and it tests way better than it should. Like, we don't know why, right? We just know that it, like, whenever we first saw that number, it's like something's broken. And, we requantify, recalibrate everything, and we get the same number. And so, I mean, the answer is yes. I think, to in the spirit of cooperation and in the spirit of kind of the peace, like, the intention of this is not to cut anybody out, right? The intention of this is not to be exclusive, right? The intention is that there's more retention in the sport, and younger shooters have a different opportunity. My kids, and I'm probably the most passionate about kids. I'm pretty excited. My daughter's going to go shoot her first little 22 match this weekend, a little local deal. So excited. You know what I mean?
Awesome.
I spent way too much on a 22 rifle to make this happen. But, my kids have every opportunity to be a better shooter than me based off of shooting suppressed, and that's always been really important to me. So, it's always going to kind of come back to the kids. The old timer retention, that's just kind of the lanyap, as we call it down south in Louisiana, or the gravy, that's the extra piece. So, but the idea is, and when when Ryan Killian and I wrote those P&Ps up, right, for it, like the intention was never to exclude anybody. I do think in the spirit of it, it's like, okay, how do we have groups that potentially could emulate something like a Silent Night, that type of experience for the shooter? And I have been to Silent Night whenever there was a suppressor that a guy built in his garage the night before, kind of thing, and it just didn't work, and unfortunately he was kind of hurting people because they weren't expecting it. It was kind of an unfortunate circumstance. And then, the match director, who has no problem holding his opinion, good friend of mine, Justin Watts, told him, hey, we need to do something different. And we ended up loaning him a suppressor, and it all worked out great. He had to go, re-zero and kind of get used to it a little bit. But I do want to talk about the scythe, because I realized, I didn't talk about that, and I'll be brief on it. The scythe is really an anomaly for us. I mean, we spent about a year and a half developing the scythe with zero intention for it to have any kind of motivation in PRS. I just want to be really direct about that.
It fits pretty well.
It fits
pretty well, though.
It was not a PRS design can.
Happy accident. There
was a need in the market for us to answer the calling for titanium and lightweight cans, and it's always it's not our charge, and it's not our mandate, and it doesn't come down from us guys on the executive team that we have to have these profound changes in the industry. We use a term called marginal change. If we can say make something marginally better, and we knew that there was some stuff that existed on the market, and so how do we make it marginally better? And so we came up with a new baffle geometry that didn't exist, and we threw it in titanium. I was dead set against it. I'll be the first to admit that, because whenever we talk about DBA, titanium in general can be very pingy. It gives off a very pingy tone, and I thought it was going to have every quality of that. I took one of the R&D suppressors out to the desert. I love going out to Utah and getting to go out to Utah because you just pick a rock and go shoot at it. And I took one of my little 10-pound 6.5 PRCs that, is a little hammer, and I went to shoot it, and my first initial thought was I broke something, because the recoil impulse was over so quick. It still did a good job of managing the recoil, but the impulse was over so quick. I thought I gutted the can. I thought I broke the rifle. Like, I got up, looked at it, and I'm like, oh, we might have something, without even intending on that being the case.
Sure.
And so then I took it out to some of the guys, that have become dear friends in kind of the PRS world, and just said, hey, here it is on my rifle. And I didn't even have a PRS rifle at the time, I'll be honest. You know what I mean? I've now got 6 back here. It's an addiction. I'll go to treatment for it later, but it's I'm not worried about it today. And I took it out to them, and then they said, they were like, oh yeah, there is. So for me, like, I wanted to, very similar to what Craig said, and I honor that a lot. Like, that third party validation, like, I think we got something, but what do we really got, and because the intention for the can was to be a lightweight hunting can that you could take to a blind and not have hearing protection and all that kind of stuff. And so what it's turned into is you can have a really positive experience in a match and take it hunting too, if you want to, or kind of use it across platforms or whatever the case may be. I'm learning that PRS guys are very, this is my rifle, this is my gun, the can stays on it, so.
Oh, for sure.
I guess buy 2, if that's the case, but it's, it's
for sure.
Very least.
Yeah. Buy 3. Yeah. Buy 3. One is none. So, yeah.
Yep. That's probably one of the special things about our community too, right? That if we have one and we run that primarily, well, we should probably buy a second as a backup just in case. And then, they're going to look at, what other products you offer, so that, when I go hunting, now I got a hunting specific one as well. Right. Which is beautiful if you're a manufacturer, in this space. One of the things I want to talk about, since we released the rules, and fully admit, like, I think when somebody comes out, and it's going to happen, when somebody, they make it in their garage or something along those lines, where they just put a single baffle design, or single volume design with, an ace brake or a 419 brake attached to it, and calls it a suppressor and decides to shoot in our category here, I think that's when the wheels are going to fall off of this, and then we have to really tighten things up, right? Because that's breaking the spirit of what we're trying to do here, right?
That's right.
Which is why I wanted to have this podcast and have us all talk about it. That's totally in defeat of the category. Are we going to know exactly when that happens? Probably. It's going to be a match director that says, "Hey, I got somebody that has a Form 1, and this is what it looks like," and it doesn't do anything, right? You might as well have taken a break and wrap some electrical tape around it. Until that point, I think the rules are pretty good. I think we've defined it well enough to say, what qualifies and what doesn't. And of course, like the Maverick, we've had to come out and say, yeah, that's gonna qualify in this, in its shortest configuration.
Mm-hmm.
But until something else, gross comes out, then I think things get complicated and it becomes a lot harder to manage than what we intended, right? Like one of the last things we want to do is start, populating a list that's got 1,100 suppressors on there and say these are all good, right? Or these
we
are
don't
the
want
ones
a
that are bad.
California list. We don't want a California list. We want to avoid that, right? And
That
so,
existed in production at one time.
Yeah,
right. It's terrible to manage. Yeah.
I think I'm going to go to the adverse first. I think there's already been some really cool stuff starting to come out as a result of this, right? Like there's a kid out of Utah making a break for, a different style of break for the end of our suppressors, both Charlie and Bravo. Our history in it is like a lot of the accessories that you see, we came up with those thread pitches, which is really convenient.
Yeah,
we don't mind other people. Yeah, we don't mind. It was originally called Omega, and so, we love that. We love that people kind of innovate. And I've got one of the, hell, it's sitting here on the desk. You know what I mean? I've been shooting it. The kid did a great job out of it. I want to be supportive. We're at the spot as a suppressor company, and the suppressor market is so huge right now that it's like, I can't really dedicate time to that or machines to that, just to be really honest. And I hate to be that way, but the suppressor world is as big as it maybe is ever going to be. And, the most recent data says that we jumped by over 50% of suppressor ownership between 23 and 24.
That's amazing.
There's over 4.5 million suppressors out in the market. I know that of those, 750,000 of them are Omegas, which is really cool, but and a lot of them are Sice. I know a lot of them are Sice too, but we've got to support that market. So I think on the adverse of it, we're already starting to see some really cool kind of innovative space, because all of us, Craig, Silencer Co., we all started in a garage somewhere, right? We all started in a garage with not enough power and machines that we needed to replace. And so, we love supporting those guys and those smaller guys and really helping them come along. The other side of it, and Craig, I'm going to value your opinion on this as well. Where it'll be tough is, Craig's pitching in some money, I think. You know what I mean? I want to see the suppressor category get to where we're outpacing you, Ken. You know what I mean? And they're making more money on the suppressor category than they are by winning the damn golden bullet. That's my goal, right?
To be clear, I won't let that happen. There will be more money that comes out of the PRS to make sure that the guy walking away with the golden bullet.
You hear what suppressors are doing for y'all PRS community in this deal?
Deep pockets over here got big promises.
so
take a loan if I have to.
But it would be really cool. It would be really tough as a suppressor manufacturer to get up there and give that check to something that doesn't follow the spirit of the division, right? It would be really tough to continue to support that. And I'm just being really honest and really frank about it, right? I have no problem if, one of Craig's hotshot shooters is up there in Pennsylvania this fall and I give him a check, right? No problem. Or Thunder Beast or there's a lot of suppressor companies coming on the market, and there's a lot of damn good suppressor companies, right? But it would be hard to do that with somebody who's not within the spirit of the division. Form
1's going to get really gray.
It is. Yeah. It is. because
Form 4 is probably going to stay pretty clean.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, at worst, we have to come up with an exclusion list, and well, I guess at worst, we have to just say it's got form 4 with an exclusion list is probably the worst, right? And I don't want to do that. One of the greatest things, and I'll give you an example with production division, because I think there's a lot of opinions on production division, and folks think that it should be really a bunch of guys running around with $1,000 rifle that they bought at their local sporting goods store and competing, for trophies. In reality, somebody that spent $1,000 on a rifle at their local sporting goods store isn't going to spend $1,000 or $1,500 or $2,000 on a weekend to shoot a PRS Pro Series match. That's just those folks are in different circles. It's mutually exclusive. They're just not going to do that. But a lot of people don't point out the fact that because of the production division, there are some really, really good rifles out there that are at $3,000. If you want to go buy a Gap PPR, if you want to go buy an MPA PMR Pro, like those exist because of our rules. There's also really good scope options out there that exist at their price point because of our rules, right? Like when the Mark V first came out, it was $1,999. Like that is a fantastic scope for $1,999 because of our rules, right? Same thing here. We're going to see a lot of development. We're going to see, there's guys out there that have ideas on how to innovate in this suppressor category to come up with high performing, hopefully sound and let off, recoil reduction, products that we all benefit from, right? That maybe they get, maybe there's shooters out there that say, hey, I'm never going to use a suppressor to compete with. That maybe they just haven't seen the right suppressor yet. Your guys' companies are working on stuff. There's other companies working on stuff that it's gonna evolve. We're gonna have some really great things, great options in the future.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't know what the right answer is today. It's and I just know that I know there's a lot of us, and Craig, I'm going to speak for you, right? Sorry to do that. I know this is our first podcast together, but like we just care about the people and we care about the industry, right? And we want to see you succeed. And so, in order to do that, we've got to have our place in it, right? And we've got to have we've got to have our spot. And so, I always go back to kind of the spirit of the category, right? The spirit is that we could potentially retain and be safer and with these kids and go to all that. And my hope is, I realize the world's an interesting place, right? But my hope is that everybody just kind of falls with that, right? Because that's the quality of people that we have, right? That's the quality of the people that have taken me in and taken me under the wing and showed me a little bit of this or showed me a little bit of that, is immeasurable. And I'm not a great shooter, right? I'm not a great PRS shooter. But I'm a hell of a lot better than I was by the people that have taken me and just said, hey, Chase, why don't you think about doing this, right? And so that's who we're looking at supporting. So I hope that people that come up with new innovative products, they keep that in mind, that it's like, hey, it's about the people.
Yeah, I think there's, if you look at the characters in the top 200, I don't think you're going to see any one of those guys. And I think, and I'm not just picking on top 200, but I think that's reflective throughout the community. But you're not going to see a character like that do something gross to try to game the system, just because there's a few $1,000s on the line. I think the characters are going to do what's right, and they'll call a spade when it happens.
That's the big one to me, because it's going to happen. It's happened before. Production class, there have been hullabaloos around that kind of stuff before. But when it happens, of those top 200, 195 of them are going to say, "Come on, man, we all know what's happening here," and that's important. And I think that makes nothing makes being the director an easy job, But it also, as director, gives you a place to look around and say, all right, guys, this community has to at some point be able to self-police. And when we know something's wrong, we all know something's wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, I appreciate it, guys. Do you have any closing remarks on this press category or other products you guys are working on or things in general?
I think it's a really cool addition. It's another way for people to compete, and I'm grateful to be a part of it and this as well, because to Chase's point, what we can do to make the sport more inviting and safer and longer lasting, and to maybe get rid of some of the heavy churn in cycling and shooters you get. If this is a part of it, then absolutely, let's go. I'm all for it. And the Maverick's been out for 6 years or so now. Who knows what comes of it? It's a product that we don't have in stock all the time. Honestly, we made it so that it was available for people to have. It's kind of a pain to make. If you want to be a great silencer company, not only do you need to be good at turning, you need to be really good at welding. And our design, we're not good at welding. So, how does it evolve? How does it change? We don't really know. We're making as many of them as we can. And I understand that, Silencer Co., you guys make an order of magnitude or 2 or 3 more suppressors than we do. And you fight the same fight. How do you make more of them? But we're humbled by the support of the product. And as far as new stuff all the time. 419
Awesome.
Day this year is on 418 because that's a Friday. But yeah, there's new stuff. Nothing in Maverick, but there's new stuff.
Awesome. Chase?
Thanks so much for having me on. Craig, it's wonderful to spend some time with you, and Ken, always wonderful to spend time with you. I think you need to have your wife as a co-host, though. That's my suggestion for you. And I just want to say thank you to the members. Thank you to the people. I couldn't. I go back to what I started with saying is I couldn't have asked for a more welcoming introduction into this. It's gotten passionate to the point that my wife's going to go to some matches with me. My kids are wanting to get involved. We've got a little rickety barricade set up in the backyard that we practice on and just play around with. It's turning into a family thing, which is always an ideal situation for me. Like Craig, opportunity to spend more time with the kids. I'm very fortunate that they're wanting to do something that, this is beyond working for a suppressor manufacturer for me now. I'm beyond that. And now I'm obsessed, and it's that thing that in my life that I can get, marginally better at and hopefully improve. No golden bullets in my future, anything like that. I don't have time to go up and down the road, but I love being out there. I love supporting the people, and I really appreciate and value the friendships that have come out of it as a result of it.
That's awesome. Well, I'll say from the community, it's awesome having you guys involved. I absolutely love that we have so many good companies and good folks involved in the sport, and you guys are among the best. You're very, very highly regarded and respected, and I appreciate both of your friendships. So thank you guys for coming on, and with that, we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.